Alright guys, old Blue Accord. Well, back in Berea at the Artisan Center, my favorite place. Favorite place when I'm on the road. It's windy. We got a front coming in. If you want to look at your weather. So I don't even know if you can hear it over the wind, so I'm gonna jump in the Jeep. And yeah, it's been a nice fall. Been a nice fall in the south because we've had rain. We usually don't get rain, and we've gotten rain about once a week, so, and another one's coming. Whew. All right, well, we're in. Let's lock the doors. Check, do a neck check. Got it. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start this up. So what I wanted to talk about while I'm taking my little lunch break. Oh, we gotta look at lunch too. Okay, so I went back with the Polish sausage, and then he added pimento cheese because they make their own pimento cheese. It's very good. I'll be eating that in a minute. It smells great. So yeah, let's get the Jeep started up and go through the mid startup stuff. And what I want to talk about is fuel mileage. I had a little discussion on the guy put a post on binderplanet.com, and you guys know I like car forums, and I've had an International Scout for since the early 90s. And yeah, so the guy was actually talking about EV vehicle and the range and how the range is calculated, and I kind of got a chuckle because he topped it off, but then the range, your overall range, like they said, like you've got a range number here, wasn't quite right. And it is frustrating because this vehicle does it too. So this is where I started out. I gassed up yesterday for a trip. It's 270 miles and I've gone 171. So when I gassed up, I had 18.8. Now I had 13.6, and that's about what I get around town. So the range full to the top, and I actually have a real gas gauge, which that's tough with electric vehicles. You don't have this type of gauge, so this is actually reading your fuel with a float, so you could just ignore all these numbers and know that I've got quite a bit of fuel left. Never mind what these numbers say. Now, why I'm saying never mind what these numbers say, when I filled up, it calculated from that 13 point whatever 3 or 13.7, it came up with like a 316. I drove an hour, so I already drove 2.5 hours, and it still said 316 mile range. Now, why? Well, obviously because when you jump on the highway, I'm getting 5.5 more miles per gallon. So this calculation is going to change, but it doesn't change immediately. You have to kind of use your head a little bit, and obviously it's going to look at the last, because I drove all in the city all last week, so it has this vehicle has no earthly clue that I jumped on the I-75, filled up, jumped on I-75, and drove on the highway. Now the 18.8 is about right, because the vehicle's rated for, it's a Jeep SRT, so it has the V8, right? So it's rated for 13 city, 19 highway. I drive in sport mode, so that means I turn the sport, or you can do it with the shifter. So you don't have MDS, you don't have cylinder deactivation. I don't like cylinder deactivation. I don't like the sound of it while you're driving. So we're looking at this. So what is your and this is the part where with electric vehicles, I don't know if you can do this, but you should be able to, because electric vehicles trying to figure out, if you're driving on the highway, driving locally, towing, etc. And unless you actually put in those parameters, and you can, a lot of electric vehicles, you can say, hey, I'm towing, and you push the button, and you tell it how much weight, and it does the calculations for you. So it's a lot smarter than this setup is right here. But you got to use a little common sense. And then, like I said, what's the nice thing about the having a gas gauge in an internal combustion engine is, never mind all these numbers, you at least have this to tell you, hey, I'm not going to run out. Never mind what this number says. So what we've got, so to wrap this up so I can eat my lunch, is, for me, if I was really, really curious about what my range is and what was going on, I would just clear this out. And that's probably what you should do when you fuel up, just to get started. But now that I've got the 18.8, and then my range is there, let's just go ahead and let's see, hold OK to reset, and I'll reset it. That's going to be, and you generally got to hold the button in. Okay, so now my running average, and that hasn't changed. So now we're going to go back to trip, and it's got an A and B trip, and I like the A and B trip because the B kind of gives you an overall, 34 hours, 4,000 miles, because people kind of cheat with fuel miles. They drive downhill, Thunderhead and a bunch of them, they'll drive it downhill and saying they're getting 25 miles to the gallon because they just reset this, like you're going to really fall for that. But I try to keep the A, then we're going to reset it. It's all zeros. And then we'll kind of see what happens with this range. Now, me just sitting here not driving, it's not going to do anything, obviously, because it doesn't really have a way to calculate exactly what it's doing. Now, this Jeep should have a 25-gallon tank. I believe that's correct. Sometimes I think it's a little bit bigger than that, but let's go with 25-gallon. And then, obviously, I've got way more than a half a tank. So let's say I would say I've got at least 16, 17 gallons. So you kind of know by 18, by 17, you can kind of math out where you're going. And 300 might be right. That sounds actually on the high side to me. I think it's calculating. It moved around a little bit. It was at 300 right as I was coming up. And then I looked and it was like 293, and I was like, well, I just stopped at the exit and drove 2 miles off the highway. So I don't think I lost 10 miles on my trip, but you never know. So anyway, kind of good discussion. I like it. I like numbers and stuff. I like all this little, telemetry stuff. Like I said, when I'm driving, I play with it. I use my little gauges. One thing I don't like about the gauges, I'll leave it, is one, they're slow. But the numbers that you want to look at, like generally everybody wants to know what their oil pressure is, and then they want to know what their temperature is. They're not on the same screen, so you're constantly doing this and flipping to check coolant. And it's like, I'd rather have this, and you can't move. I've tried trying to move this, like if you hold your finger. I'm sure maybe the newer vehicles, and somebody that could program this could spiff this up. It would be easy to move this stuff around, but I don't really know anybody. But yeah, that's just kind of a little thing on mileage and how it's calculated. And I do understand that you got an EV vehicle and it takes a little longer to charge up. Like I don't believe there's any EV charging here. And I found that a little hard to believe, but there's no gasoline here either. It's not that type of rest stop. But saying that, you could probably be in a jam, be like, hey, I'm flat on my ass, and get an extension cord and 110 charge your vehicle. Don't think you can't. I don't know where people get the idea that there's not electric available everywhere in the United States. But some of the people that talk about EV stuff it gives me a little chuckle because they kind of trip themselves up a little bit. I heard something too on CNBC. Guy was bragging, because they're talking about getting rid of the Lightning, and he's like, well, I've got an F-150 and it'll go 900 miles on the tank. I'm like, well, that's great, except who drives 900 miles? I mean, I did 170, and I was in the Jeep. I wasn't in the Jeep 2.5 hours. That's probably me talking and idling like we're doing now. But I'm going to stop and get something to eat and go to the bathroom. I'm not driving 900 miles straight. I'm not some kind of over-the-road trucker. I'm not wearing a catheter. This isn't the Baja 1000. So if you really need a 1,000-mile range without stopping, then an EV vehicle is not for you, obviously. If you're driving like me back and forth, this will be a 500-mile round trip. An EV vehicle, I can do it. I can stop at Buc-ee's and charge up and piddle around for about 45 minutes. You definitely can do it, but I'd rather just go on one tank of gas and then gas up more and come back. And obviously gassing up is quicker than charging, so you're just gonna have to decide for yourself. But I think some of the arguments are kind of cute. Yeah, so we'll leave it at that. I'm kind of pissing gas away here, so obviously, and I guess the range, I was trying to see if the range would move a little bit, but it didn't. 292. All right, so cool. Yeah, and I'm getting good at gas mileage. 18. It's very windy, you can see, so I'm losing a little bit there. And then my average speed is generally pretty high, so I don't dawdle around too much on the highway, especially after you've done this trip like 25,000 times, or 250 times. Then it kind of gets boring. So I'm gonna eat my sausage, have some coffee. Old Blue Accord. Thanks a lot for looking. Try to remember to like and subscribe. That really helps my channel. get on the logarithm, and then yeah, we'll have more discussion on range and range stuff and fuel miles. Fuel miles is kind of fun sometimes. So yeah. Anyway, thanks again for looking. Old Blue Accord. Have a great day.